Right now at 5, Hurricane Ian rips through Florida, leaving behind widespread devastation. How more Hoosiers are stepping up to help.
Plus, shocking new details from a shooting in Avon that left a grandmother and a 4-year-old injured. What ID made uncovered about who pulled the trigger.
News 8 at 5 starts now.
This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history.
What it really does is left the place almost unrecognizable in some places.
Right now at 5 o'clock, Florida begins picking up the pieces after Hurricane Ian rips through the state, leaving widespread destruction. This from Fort Myers, where the storm leveled buildings and tossed debris all across the beachfront.
Flooding is a major concern as Ian makes its way north across the state. In Orlando, a woman wades through waist-high water just to cross from one side of the street to the other. Crews are now starting to survey the damage left behind.
That's right. Gloria Pazmino is in Fort Myers and has the latest on Ian's devastation and the search and rescue operations now underway.
Hurricane Ian, now a historic storm that dropped a devastating amount of water, brought a destructive amount of wind onto the Florida area. And here in Fort Myers, the area has been devastated by the force of that storm. I'm standing in the Fort Myers Yacht Basin, and you can see behind me some of these boats have been completely pushed up against that bridge. You see there, traffic is starting to come back into the city. Much of it is still without power. People starting to take to the street to assess the damage that Hurricane Ian has left them in its destructive path.
There's really no words that I can say to tell you what I've seen. The Fort Myers Beach area, buildings, major homes and buildings completely washed away with vehicles in the water, vehicles in the bay. Boats are upside down.
Tied as the fourth most powerful hurricane to hit the Sunshine State, Ian blasted ashore Wednesday, just shy of a Category 5 storm.
The amount of water that's been rising and will likely continue to rise today, even as the storm is passing, is basically a 500-year flood event.
Residents now getting their first glimpse at the scope of the damage.
Very flooded. It's ruined, completely ruined. The fridge is on the floor. The couches are turned upside down. The toilets are on the floor.
Many residents still trapped in their homes.
You kind of find yourself in a position where you're totally powerless.
With dozens of houses still underwater, search and rescues are now underway.
We currently have aircraft in the air with the Florida National Guard actively pulling people off of roofs in Fort Myers.
And as Ian continues its destructive march across Florida, parts of the East Coast are getting pummeled.
This is my community. This is my home. It's not only for my pain, it's for everybody's pain. I'm terrified for everybody. It's not only all our trailers, it's half of Cape Coral, it's half of everywhere.
2.6 million Floridians are currently without power, and the cleanup process here is just getting started. This is going to likely take months. This will certainly be a multi-billion-dollar damage that this storm has left in its past. Live in Fort Myers, Gloria Pazmino.
Gloria, thank you. Hey, take a look at this drone video of flooding in Cape Coral. You can see floodwaters reaching up to knee-high levels as rescuers use rafts to get to those in need. Ian has re-strengthened into a Category 1 hurricane, according to the National Hurricane Center. For more on where it's heading next, here's Storm Track 8 meteorologist Tara Hastings.
Here's a look at the incredible rainfall rate here across parts of central Florida over the last 24 hours, anywhere between a foot and even a foot and a half of rain from Daytona Beach all the way down to about Cape Coral. So an intense rainfall situation across Florida. And this system looks like it's going to intensify yet again and move across the eastern sections of Florida and also into South Carolina, where it could strengthen later tonight to a Category 1 storm and make landfall yet again around the Charleston, South Carolina area as a Category 1 storm early Friday morning. Lots of storm surge and also some heavy rainfall. We already have hurricane warnings in place across much of South Carolina, from Charleston all the way back to parts of Georgia in the Savannah area as well. Rainfall amounts from this system could really begin to add up, anywhere between 5 and possibly 7 inches of rainfall here right along the South Carolina coast, heading into parts of Charleston. I'm meteorologist Tara Hastings, Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
Tara, thank you. Even more Hoosier helpers are on their way to Florida to assist in hurricane relief efforts. More than a dozen Indiana National Guard soldiers set off this morning.
News 8's Camila Fernandez was at this morning's departure and has more on what lies ahead.
They're in a bad situation in Florida right now, and we have the time and resources here in Indiana to help out, so it feels good to be able to help the community.
Several Indiana National Guard soldiers with the 38th Infantry Division's Aviation Brigade are taking their love for helping people to new heights. On Thursday, groups of soldiers boarded 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters with the goal to assist military and civilian agencies. They'll be joined by 3 flight crews and mechanics.
With some of the power outages and things like that, people might not have access to necessary items needed for survival, like water, clean water, things like that.
There's a lot of work ahead for these soldiers. They'll be depending on helicopters like this one to help civilians.
Some of these areas that are still underwater, you can't necessarily get to them by ground vehicles, or it might be a little bit slower in a boat or something like that. So getting there through the air in the helicopter, it gives that much needed reprise.
The helicopters have a capacity of about 9,000 pounds and will carry things like water, food, and medical supplies.
I'd say I'm excited. This is something we train for weekly and daily, something we think about, and it feels good to be able for all that training to come to fruition and able to help out people that are needed.
But there are some challenges ahead for these soldiers.
Any kind of hazards on the ground, going into unknown locations, things like that. So we want to make sure we're looking at all our landing sites. What we do as a nation when, bad things happen or, disaster strikes, we always come together and, lend a helping hand. And I'm just proud to be part of that mission.
The soldiers say they plan to arrive to Tampa, Florida tomorrow. In Shelbyville, Camila Fernandez, Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
Camila, thank you. Indiana Task Force 1 is sending even more help to Florida. An additional 35 members left for the state today. 48 are already in the state and have been deployed to an area in Central Florida dealing with flash flooding. Task Force 1 Program Director Tom Neal explains why more members are needed.
So the state of Florida, based on the impact of the storm, has made the indication that they need the additional resources to help facilitate the search and rescue operations in their state.
Task Force 1 says they expect to be in Florida for at least 2 weeks. We've got a link on how you can help with recovery efforts right now on wishtv.com. All you have to do is click on the story under the As Seen On section.